The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Quirky Dog Podcast, inspired by some of the quirkiest dogs you can ever imagine and the owners who love them. This podcast is brought to you by the quirky couple themselves, Scott and Jess Williams. Their aim is to educate and entertain. Here's Scott and Jess.
Welcome, guys, and happy Wednesday. Today we have Scott and Jess and Kelly. Kelly is one of our in-person clients, and I'm so excited to have her on today. But first, we're going to start with Quirky Tip of the Day. All right, our Quirky Tip of the Day is, and this came straight from Kelly, the most important thing for her and her dog Lola's success. Lola is actually here with us. She's a German Shepherd. You'll see her in the YouTube thumbnail. We probably won't get her to come up on our laps here, but she's
a little big.
Yeah, she's here on the set with us, is consistency. So if you are struggling with your dog, and if you have sought out some sort of, trainer or training program that's working, if it is working, make sure you have a consistent program at home that you're following to make sure that success continues. So Kelly,
and it never ends.
Yeah, it's true. And Kelly has gone above and beyond. That's kind of why we wanted to have her on the podcast here today. The podcast today is titled From Prozac to Peace, because Lola was originally on Prozac, and then we did some training, and Kelly's had kind of a long go with her, but really Kelly is the one who's made Lola's success what it is because of your consistency and your training at home. We tell everyone, if all of our clients were like her, everything would go a lot better. So you got Lola when she was a puppy. Tell us a little bit about what that journey was like, because she's kind of old now. She's about 5, and that's when you actually kind of wanted to intervene and do some training.
Yeah, I got her as a puppy. I did a lot with her, tried some training, and then COVID hit, and then everything kind of stopped.
Okay.
And then she never got exposed to anybody from age 2 to 4.
Okay.
And that's when we started having issues with her. So then people would come over, she'd get nervous. Anything out of her little world of just me and her at home, and the kids, but mostly me.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of anxiety developed when things would be novel.
Yes.
And then you guys have another little dog.
Yes, Snoopy. And she's a 13-year-old Yorkie who antagonizes Lola, and that doesn't help. So they were not getting along either. And that's pretty much what made me seek you guys out.
Yeah. Snoopy, by the way, is like a gymnast. We've never seen a dog that's as amazing as Snoopy.
There were a couple of bites in there along the way.
Yeah.
Yep.
She would get a little bit testy, even with family members.
Yes. Yeah. She kind of went up mostly when she was cornered or sleeping, and she got startled.
Yeah.
That's when it would happen.
Yeah, and you guys had some issues with the vet situation and that kind of thing too, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, she'd go to the vet, and of course, again, during COVID, I couldn't go in with her.
Yep.
And then she'd get nervous, and I wouldn't know what was happening inside the vet, and then she'd come out. And then when I could go in with her again, she was wouldn't let them do anything to her. They tried to muzzle her, and she would just completely freak out.
Okay.
So.
And the handling was an issue too. I mean, Lola is, I think, the first candidate that we had. I do all the boot camp dogs' nails. We put her in a muzzle and a cone for me to do her nails before we sent her home. And she hadn't really had a nail trim in a bit, right? Because it was so difficult. All right, so tell us the Prozac journey, because she was on Prozac for how long before we saw her?
Probably just under a year.
Okay, and what was the reasoning? Why were you recommended to try that? What did that look like?
Well, she was, like I said, she was anxious over everything. Actually, I didn't mention it, but even the washing machine running.
Okay.
And then when she would get anxious, you just kind of couldn't get her back from it.
Okay.
And I didn't know what to do. I used Google. I couldn't get her, during COVID. I tried finding somebody to do in-person training, but it was always over Zoom, and I'm like, this isn't working for us. So the vet recommended it.
Okay.
And it seemed to take her edge off a little bit, but it never fixed the problem.
Okay. Yeah, because by the time we got there, you still had your
still going
issues.
on.
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys have a unique situation where you kind of move around throughout the year. You're on the lake in the summer, and then, you have another house for the winter months and everything else. Did her behavior change based on where she was living and anything like that, like her environment, or not really?
The first few weeks we would move, because we would move for 6 months and then go back for 6 months. So the first month or so, it would be worse.
A lot of decompression and stress.
Then it would reduce. It would never go away. But
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk training. So we saw her last summer, right? That's when she came in. We did a boot camp with Lola. You had found Scott, just online?
Yeah, my daughter found him online, actually.
Oh, good job, Lainey.
Yep.
Cheers, Lainey. Well done.
Were you using a crate at that time? I can't remember.
No, I had crate trained her when she was a puppy.
Right.
And then we'd stopped.
Yeah.
Okay. You still had the crate.
I
You
still
just
had
weren't
the
using
crate.
it. Yeah.
It was smaller because she had grown.
Yeah.
She didn't fit in it. So I had to get another one, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. So Scott came into the eval. I wasn't there for the initial eval. Where were your, Kelly's husband's name is Mark. Where were your heads at? Like, kind of how did all that evolve for you?
We were kind of at our wits' end.
Okay.
I didn't know what to do anymore because she's bigger, obviously she's a German Shepherd and my Yorkie was small and it was kind of becoming a safety issue. And I was like, I don't know what to do anymore. I have this 13-year-old Yorkie and this 5-year-old Shepherd and they can't get into interactions because it's not going to go well for the Yorkie. So we were at our wits' end and I actually wasn't very hopeful. I was like, I couldn't get her to sit anymore. She had stopped coming when I'd call her. She used to come, but then she'd stopped. She'd be worried that we were going to leave, so then she wouldn't come, and then it was a issue. And then when Scott came, it was like the first 5 minutes, probably my mouth was wide open, like, how is he getting her to do these things? I've been trying.
Yeah, she worked pretty well for me. I thought, it was a nice dog.
I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you guys were saying, "Do you think she's trainable?" I was like, "Well, yeah, she's doing everything here."
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's part of it with her is she, is a German Shepherd, but she definitely is bred to be more of like a working dog than, just this like foo-foo German Shepherd. And I think that's part of her continued success right now is that you are working her at home and you are kind of sticking with the program. So talk to people a little bit about like when we had her versus when she came home and how you are still following up with stuff.
So when she came home, you had done it first as the nail clipping in the muzzle. I'm like, all right, we're going to try this muzzle thing. So you guys, when you brought her back, showed me how to put it on. It was not easy. It took 2 people. And so I'm like, all right, that's the first thing I'm going to just try to master, do the regular walking, but try to get the muzzle because I knew she had to go back to the vet. And putting the muzzle on her at the vet the first year before did not go well. So I, consistently put the muzzle on her, walked her for a few feet. I had Cheese Whiz so that when I put the muzzle on her, she didn't hate it. And it got to the point where I could just walk her around the yard with a muzzle on.
Yeah, I think one day Scott was like, oh, Kelly just sent us a video of Lola with the muzzle. And I'm like, oh, let me see. And literally, like, she's walking her around the yard. She's sitting. I'm like, whoa, like Kelly's taking this to a whole nother level.
It was funny because you're the first client that you'd walk, sit, can of Cheese Whiz squirting in the muzzle. Heel, sit, Cheese Whiz in the muzzle.
No,
it
worked great. Yeah. And I mean, Lola didn't really like anything on her face. I think it wasn't as much the muzzle. She didn't like a gentle lead or anything else. And honestly, to condition her to just moving with me in the muzzle, I actually put a gentle leader under the muzzle before she went home and kind of guided her around that way to teach her not to mess with it. So you took that
and she wasn't great at that point.
No. She would take a few steps and I knew that like we could get a muzzle on her in the vet's office, but it wasn't like what you were sending us with videos where she's walking around the yard now, like basically doing healing. So you took that to a whole other level and it worked great.
Yeah. And then a few months later I had to go to the vet and I brought her in without the muzzle on. And when the vet came in, I said, let me put the muzzle on. I put her on. She let them do anything to her. She never even turned her head sideways to them. And even the vet made a comment, was like, wow, she's really improved.
Yeah, it was next level. We
that was not easy to get to that point.
No, it wasn't. And we had the privilege of having her a little bit over the holidays because Kelly and her family went on a few vacations. So she came back from boarding. And this last trip, I literally just put the muzzle on. She wasn't wearing a cone or anything. Scott held her and I did her nails and it was like 2 different dogs. Like literally, she was she was there. She was perfect. Scott was petting her. I mean, it was literally no fuss. So this dog that I had to put a muzzle on and put a cone and Elizabethan collar on to get her nails cut, like was night and day. So you helping her along the journey once she went back home has really made all the difference also. So let's talk about weaning off the Prozac a bit because that had happened. How long of a process was that? You did that with the vet, right?
Yeah, I forget exactly how it was. I called the vet and they said, go reduce the dose by half, go for, I think it was 10 days. I don't remember the exact timing. And then reduce it again and again and again until she was like every other day and then she was off it.
Did you notice anything during that?
I didn't.
Weaning?
She didn't seem to have any withdrawals or anything during that.
What'd you do with all those extra Prozacs?
They're still sitting in a drawer. I probably should flush them.
No, but I mean, it was an important thing for us because behaviorally she was getting so much better. We're like, let's see if she doesn't need the medication. Let's see what that would look like. It's, not a continuity thing now that they're having to pay for. And I think she's just a happier, more stable dog. And for us, Scott and I weren't really sure, well, what is she thinking on the Prozac? Is she maybe more afraid of stuff like handling? We weren't quite sure where her head was at, and based on her past experiences with vets and COVID and everything else, we weren't sure if maybe it wasn't hurting. So she was weaned off the Prozac. You've kept up with her training program. You give her a pretty good exercise regimen too. I want to touch on that. You guys are out playing ball with her. You're getting her out and moving.
Yeah, our backyard is all fenced in, so she'll come now, but I usually go out in the backyard and play catch with her. Mark comes home at lunch a lot of times and takes her out, plays catch with her. I find if I walk her every day consistently, she's even better because it's more of it's not just
structured activity.
It's more structured, not just the play, because sometimes she gets really excited when she plays ball. She loves her ball. So.
Yeah. And I want to touch on that too, because I remember one of those first walks, you're like, well, what about when I see other dogs? There was a big curve there for you too. So talk about how that changed and how your control got better there.
So I actually got to the point where I wouldn't take her to the beach anymore. I wouldn't walk on a public road. I would just walk on our property. And after she came back, I took her one of the first times I took her on a walk, she was being great. And then this dog came running across the street and I was like, oh no, this is not going to go well. And she completely listened to me. She just stayed. When I told her to heel, she just stayed. And luckily the dog owner called him back. But they came face to face, and she never even barked at the dog or growled. Well, she got very...
little nervous,
but she didn't go after the dog at any way, which I thought she would.
Yeah, and she wasn't reactive at all with dogs that were on leash across the street, walking and all that.
And so now I can take her to the beach. I walk by other dogs. Before I get to a dog, I'll make sure she's paying attention to me.
Yeah, get some control.
Yeah, and then she'll walk right by the dogs. I don't go right next to them just because of my comfort level.
You can't trust those dogs
No,
either.
And a lot of those dogs are on those extendable leashes, and I don't trust those because they're not going to stop them.
Yeah, the retractables
It's important that you get off your property because both homes are isolated.
Yes, very isolated.
You're down this long dirt road,
Yeah.
and then you have your space.
Yeah.
She may not see a dog for a week down there, or longer.
Yeah. So now I'll take her for walks on the beach. And the first time I took her to the beach, I guess it was last fall, I was like, well, we'll see how this goes.
Good attitude.
And it went, I got home and I was like, I can't believe how well that went. So
yeah, no, she did great. And then let's talk about a little bit of the stuff in the house too, because you're implementing a decent amount of structure in the house to keep things, copacetic between the two dogs and her anxiety quelled. So you're using the crate. That was something that you have started to implement more.
I hadn't been using the crate, and now that I am, it's actually a fantastic tool because I had stopped having people over because I was like, I don't know what to do with her.
Yeah.
And you can't trust people.
No,
they can run right up to, they don't know the dog, they just want to see the dog.
And I'm like, just let Lola be. If you just let Lola be, she's not going to come to you. But if you're trying to go pet her when she's laying,
you're going to make her uncomfortable.
Sleeping, yeah. So now, this past Thanksgiving, we had 8 or 10 people there, and I just put her in her crate in the other room. She never fussed. She barked when the door opened, and then never again. And so now I feel like I have another tool that I can
socialize
and actually have people over.
Safely.
Yes.
And it protects Lola too.
It does. And at night, she used to sleep up in our room. She didn't sleep on our bed, but the Yorkie does because she rules the house. But she does. We don't have a lot of control over her, I'll be honest. A little better now because I've started creating.
She's very athletic, I will say that.
She is. That dog literally will jump from couch to couch when we're there. She
I was
comes out of
sitting in
nowhere.
a chair, and the next thing I know, she comes launch and lands right in my lap.
Yeah, and she's 13, so we did get a crate for Snoopy too. So that way, if someone's coming over and want to do something with Lola, I can just put Snoopy in her crate. She wasn't happy about it, but she's actually become
She's not a danger to society.
Right.
Yeah.
Because she will go and chase and nip at Lola. And then if Lola turns around, Lola's the bad guy because she's bigger. And if she grabs her, it's not
not
gonna
not
end
safe.
well.
Snoopy's very
Snoopy.
social, though. She just loves people.
Yeah, but she is strong. Kelly's right. She runs the house. Even when we get there,
Little dogs are always like that.
She has complete control over us too. So before we get to other exercises in the house,
and you're feeding the meals.
Yeah, I wanted to talk
still,
about
right?
the feeding because the feeding, she was finicky. This was a thing with her.
Since she was a puppy, she had her bowl of food and she ate as she felt like it. I had Snoopy's food up higher, so she didn't eat Snoopy's food, because again, Snoopy likes to jump up. She's kind of like a cat. And so she would just eat whenever, and I never really knew how much she was eating. So then when she went to you guys and came back, we would feed her in her crate. She didn't eat for a while. She didn't like it. It was like, I'm like, this isn't going to go well. She still won't eat if nobody's home, but if I feed her, you don't have to be sitting in the room with her, but she'll eat in her crate. And so now I know she's eating exactly how, 2 cups a day.
And she eats based on her activity too. So if she hasn't been doing a lot, she may not eat breakfast, that kind of thing.
And I see that it's based very much with her anxiety also, because we had her for, boot camp last summer, and then she came in December, and those first couple nights she was like, I'm not sure, I'm not going to eat my meal, or I'm not going to finish my meal. And then the second time we had her, she was eating that first night. Yeah. So it depends on her comfort level too, which is why when Kelly's talking about like, if they leave the house, maybe she's not going to eat. When her anxiety kind of takes over, her inappetence kind of increases, it seems. Did you notice a difference with the eating with the Prozac versus not at all, or no?
Hard to tell, because when she was on the Prozac, she was always just free fed.
Yeah.
So I don't know how she really ate then.
Okay. But she eats consistently now. They crate consistently. What about like the bed and stepping on the leash? Do you do any of that kind of stuff in the house?
Yes. A lot of times, like if we're sitting watching TV, that's when I'll have her go on her bed, because she'll, you can't actually just sit there, because she's constantly like wanting you to play ball, do something.
Yeah. She's a busybody.
She is. And when I work from home, if I'm on a Zoom call or something, I'll just have her get on her bed for the half hour or so.
How does she do with that? She settles on the bed, or?
Yeah, sometimes she whines a little bit to get off, but she stays.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you still do stepping on the leash, or not really?
I do some. I probably should do that more.
Well, I'm doing it now. Just at like the vet's office, maybe that'd be a good thing, like in the waiting room, a good exercise just to implement so she's, familiar.
Yep.
How's the recall?
Much better.
Yeah. Did you have her off leash at the beach when you went?
No, because
there's too much going on.
Well, you're not supposed to, and
Yeah.
so I'm kind of that rule follower.
Yeah.
So.
Did you bring a long line?
No.
See, it'd be nice to bring the 30-footer.
Yeah, I could.
You could just let her have some more freedom.
Yep.
And still you have good control. And if anyone wanted to give you a hard time, you have her on a leash and you could put her back on the 6-foot or something,
So when I walk her at home now, we have like a 1/4 mile like woods path, and I do that off leash. But I have never tried it at the beach. There's a lot of dogs there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were just talking about this the other day on a podcast, that there's been many times that we'll take our dogs to the beach and not even take them out of the car. It just looks like a shit show.
Yeah.
It's a problem waiting to happen, and we won't get involved in it,
I try to go at low tide.
Yeah.
So
You have plenty of beach to move around on.
Yeah, exactly. So handling wise, you're pretty much able to do anything to her.
Yeah.
You are definitely the head honcho there.
Yep.
Lola listens to Kelly best. I even picked her up to put her in the car, and Kelly's like, do you want me to do it? And I'm like, no, I feel good about her. I know her. This was after she had come in just for boarding after boot camp. Any places that you're still looking to improve, or that you're, wanting more out of her in? Like, let's touch on some of that. Any weaknesses?
Well, there's still things that make her anxious.
Yeah.
Still the
Can you do the laundry?
Still the laundry. Actually, I find if I put her in her crate while I do the laundry, she'll lay down and go to sleep.
Okay.
But if she's just roaming around the house during that time,
She'll be stressed about
she
that.
still gets stressed about that.
Yeah.
She does get stressed when we leave. She doesn't like us to leave the house. I put her in the crate when we leave, but sometimes she looks at me and doesn't really want to go in. It's the only time she doesn't want to go in the crate. She knows I'm leaving. She watches me, she's smart. She watches me put my shoes on, get my coat. And so I'm like, well, I'll outsmart her. I'll put her in her crate before I get my shoes on. And she looks at me like, I know what you're doing.
Yeah. I'm not stupid. But the washing machine or something, she never gives you a problem going in the crate if you're going to be home.
No, when I'm there, no, she doesn't.
Probably happy to go in there. Like,
Yeah.
And I know the washing machine's coming.
Yeah, and she definitely does have, genetic anxiety, I would say, more so than man-made anxiety. We see a lot of anxiety with German Shepherds in general, and I think that that's partially because of the intelligence factor. We say again and again, the dumber the dog, the less anxious the dog is going to be. So she is a little bit of an overthinker. She can get herself in trouble, but you really seem to have a lot of ways to manage it. And we can't give you enough credit, because you have been the one to step up to the plate and make sure, like, hey, that's unfair. You're not going to do that to Lola. You're an advocate for her. You're continuing along with her training. Literally, some of the exercises that Kelly, advanced on her own, way more so than anything we could have done in the finite time we had her. So I really think overall, if you stay the course, she's just going to become more and more stable, because you guys have another freaking decade with her.
I know.
One thing I want to ask is, Do you think that the way you're handling her now is a tremendous amount of more work than before when you were dealing with her?
No, because now I'm less nervous.
Yeah.
Because I know I have the tools. I would never have brought her someplace like this before. Not in a million years. I'd have been like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
But I feel like I have more tools, and so I'm not as nervous, which probably translates to her not being as nervous.
Well,
so
I say
it's
that
less work because I'm not always
Stressed.
thinking about it. Yeah, exactly.
And the reason I ask is because, you have one primary dog that you're concerned about, that you're working with. You're doing a great job. And a lot of people that I meet on the front end, they don't want to add any more work to their life. They think it's going to be more work to do this, and do I need to get a crate, and can't we just fix this without me doing anything?
Yeah.
And that's just not the way it works, because most of the time what the people are doing before I get there is causing the problem in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's not that you're doing more work, you're just behaving with your dog differently.
Yeah.
You're acting differently to get them to
And
be
the
more
quality
stable.
of your life and her life has improved a lot. Like
Yeah.
like you said, you had people over. Like, this is novel. This is so crazy.
Yeah, if we had people over before, I was constantly, for the entire time, if they were there a half hour, I was constantly watching them, making sure they weren't cornering her, making sure they, honestly, going between me and her, I always felt like it was.
And that whole thing was stressful.
Oh, it was awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not knowing how to really make it better, just trying to
Yeah.
ward off a
Right.
problem.
So now if people come over, people that aren't, like if my sister comes over who's regular, comes over, Lola just stays out. But if there's other people that come over, I'm like, oh, let's go in your crate for a few minutes just to see.
Let her decompress. And
Yeah.
keep
It's amazing
everybody-
because Jess and I have two rescue dogs, both with an extensive bite history, that we got them because the home they were in, there was just, 3 bites too many. They're just like, that's it. We're not taking this dog anymore. And these dogs are just so different. You would have no idea that either one of them has any kind of aggression or ever had any aggression. And one of them the dog is so neutral. I take that dog to clients' homes all the time because he's so neutral with other dogs. You just would never think. But in the wrong household, this aggression blossomed to a point where the dog was actually biting people. There were lawsuits. There was all these problems.
Yeah, and I would argue that Lola's issues are way more genetic than environmental, because they did transfer over to when we had her. I'm stepping on the leash right now. She's fine. She's not losing her mind, but she's, panting a little bit, a few little whines here and there. So it's not like this is just something that was man-made by you, and then she got to our house and she was a perfect little angel. So the fact that...
It's way worse when that does happen.
Yeah.
Because then we
it's
know
harder.
it's not the dog.
Yeah.
It's like most of this work has to go back when we get back to the person's home, and they got to start changing a lot of things.
Yeah, and we also see on the return, and I think I mentioned this on your return, that then the behavior is a lot different. Like, the dog's been on the bed for us for X amount of time, however long we've had the dog, it's calm, and then we get home and the dog's like inconsolable. And I was saying, like, this is transferring to, your yard, to your home. Like, this is good. And it's very telltale when we haven't been having any issues with anything, and then we reintroduce the owners, and then the issues start popping up. And we deal with that all the time. It's not like it's a hopeless thing. But again, to give you credit, I think a lot of this is more a genetic thing than a man-made thing, and because that you're keeping on the path and that you're still dedicating to her and you're doing the consistency like you had mentioned, I think that's what's giving her the success. Yeah. And I mean, do you enjoy training? Because I just feel like you work harder than a lot of our clients. No offense to you guys, we love you all.
I try.
But do you enjoy it, or do you do it?
I do. I like.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Well, you enjoy the dog.
I do enjoy the dog. It gets me out, makes me more active. Now I can bring her.
You can get away from Mark.
He does come on the walks with me. So
Okay.
give him that.
Yeah, but and whether she enjoys it or not, she's doing it, and it is really helping Lola. And Lola keeps improving. Like, when we had her back, for boarding, oh wow, this is great. The next time, next month, she was even better. The handling is improving. The vet's seeing improvement. So it's
I think that's where the payoff comes in when you're doing stuff, whether it's fun or not fun. When you go to the vet and there's no issue, that's when you can say, wow, things are really better here.
I was pretty excited that day. On the way home, I was like...
She texted us after. Well, it's important because, like, dogs need vet care, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this is a thing. Like,
and they need to get their nails clipped.
Yeah.
And they need,
they need to
basic
get
stuff.
handled. They need to be dealt with. Anything I'm missing, honey, with the Lola journey that we didn't touch on?
No, I really enjoyed the dog, and I enjoyed your whole family. The whole thing has been great. You've kept up with it, and you're a good example for everybody that has a problem dog. not to give up hope, but and like I've said to many times on the podcast, if you've been working with a trainer and things aren't getting better, don't give up on the dog. Try a different trainer. Try maybe a different style, a different methodology, and find something that works for you and your dog. Because we have many clients that have been training their dog unsuccessfully, or they haven't been able to get a handle on the problems, but they've put 2 years of training into it.
They're trying. They're putting the time in.
They're trying to do stuff. You know?
And you said you had done some stuff prior
I had
to
done
COVID.
4 different classes with her.
Yeah.
From puppy obedience or puppy kindergarten to basic obedience to nose work.
And it just wasn't getting where you wanted.
Yeah, I mean, she would do the simple task, but I just could never get past that to the whole
just
calm
basic
her
living.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the little stuff. It's almost more behavior modification stuff than actual training. But like putting her in the crate, feeding her meals in the crate, she doesn't eat, the meal goes away, stepping on the leash. These little things that are management things are really what sometimes psychologically change the dog so they are more well-rounded. The obedience could all look great, but then they still have to, exist outside of a walk where you're doing healing and everything else. I know you're doing perfect.
Do you do any more nose work at all? Any recreational stuff like that?
No, just a little bit. Like I'll throw the ball or I'll throw some treats in the yard, but I haven't done the full
How did she do when you did the classes?
She did really well.
Yeah.
She was.
Were you using boxes?
Yes, boxes, hiding things.
You should grab some boxes from the post office and
or
put
my
some
Amazon deliveries.
Yeah,
Put those to good use.
Yeah, put them out because dogs like that, and it gives them a chance to really work independently, and it builds confidence once they know the game, they see the boxes, and like, okay, cool, we're gonna do this thing.
She does know the find it command because when she loses her ball, I'll tell her to find it, and then she starts sniffing.
Yeah,
so
you better find it. And I think that it's important to note too is Kelly has 2 dogs in the house, and the rules are different. Like Snoopy, you're creating her sometimes for management, just for her own headspace, but it's not like you're living in this militant household where all the dogs are doing this hardcore obedience all the time, and that's possible.
And sometimes, we have other clients that have big, small, tiny dog. The tiny dog is the one that's setting off the big dog with the bad behavior.
I think that's the case here.
Yeah, so sometimes the best thing you can do is like if your little dog is blowing up when someone's going to come to the house, scoop up the little dog first, and then you don't have the second one following the little dog's behavior.
Yeah, when someone does come to the house, that's the first thing I do now is I pick up Snoopy.
Yeah.
I mean, she's only 7 pounds. So.
Right, but she sets off Lola, and then it's a big,
Yeah, she's the one that's barking, not Lola.
Right, yeah.
And Lola has good enough obedience that maybe Snoopy's taunting her, but Lola will stay on her bed. Like Kelly has good enough control over her. And that's another thing to take note of. Kelly and Mark's kids are older now. They're kind of in and out. They're not living at home full time, but you are like the primary handler with her. Yeah. And that's okay. Like if the rules are a little bit different from person to person, that's fine. As long as someone there, the dog knows, is running the ship and can handle a vet visit or something like that. I think it's important to note because people get really stressed like, what if my husband's not doing this? And what if my husband's not on the same page? And I need my kids from college to come home and do classes. And no, not necessarily. As long as you have control of the dog, you'll be all set.
Yeah, I mean, in my house, I have no control of any of the dogs.
It's less of a joke than one would think, even though we host a dog training podcast. Kelly, anything we missed that you want to mention or touch on?
I don't think so. Yeah. I think she's happier. I'm happier.
Yeah, we're happy too. Well, and you're just a badass. I can't say enough good things about Kelly. We love getting feedback from all of our clients, and we want our clients to, reach out with trouble and everything else. But you have gone above and beyond with like sending videos, not only for critiquing, but also to be like, hey, like I had a win. Look at this. This is going well. And
that's why it's nice to board when you need some boarding. We're happy to take Lola because we know you keep up with it.
Yeah.
If things are getting out of control and then you're like, yeah, we need you to do some boarding and do some training again because it's way out of control, it's kind of a bummer for us because we know they're not doing it. And
it gives me peace of mind too, because if I go away for a week and I leave her with somebody that's not going to continue, then I'm like, I'm going to go back and she's going to maybe have regressed.
Yeah.
So now I go away for a week and I'm like, oh, I know she's going to come back probably better.
You actually go on vacation. You don't have that stress.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, just as an aside, not everyone that even does a board and train with us gets the boarding option, but we like these long-term relationships with these dogs that are good, that can come back, that we see year and year again, because, they're like part of our family too. Lola lives in our kitchen. We get home, her tail's banging everywhere. She wants to be the first one out.
Yeah. I mean, they know the routine with us too, so they settle right in when they come back.
Yeah. All right. Anything else, sweetie?
I think we're good.
Yeah, you're doing great. We're super proud of you. And
Thanks.
just people out there, if you guys are listening and you have tried medication or you're considering medication, it may work for some, and that's more than fine. But Kelly is a testament of the training, and weaning the dog off of this has given her everything she wanted in life and more, and we couldn't be more grateful.
You trade in the medication for Cheese Whiz.
Yes.
And I think Cheese Whiz is a lot cheaper too. So how much Cheese Whiz can you get for a bottle of Prozac? All right, guys, thanks so much for joining us here today. Kelly, thanks for coming on. Lola is here. You'll see her in the thumbnail. She doesn't want to jump up. She's very good behaved. She doesn't even jump anymore. We'll see you guys next week. And in the meantime, keep it quirky. Bye, guys.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.